Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show. Now we are joined by Neil, Eli, Adam Meakin, who else we got? Arwin, 10th Man, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Greetings, everyone.
Hey, Nathan.
Good afternoon.
Hey, good morning, guys.
Hey, good afternoon.
Wow, very enthusiastic. Good to hear. Let's rattle our way through housekeeping. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere-edge horizon, formerly known as Earth curve?
Nah, negative.
No, Oklahoma.
It's an apparent position.
Not from the circle of the Earth.
Apparent position, yeah, all horizons are apparent, and the horizon in the physical geometric sphere-edge horizon world of Earth curve calculations is exactly that, physical and geometric, and beyond the limitations of an Earth sphere radius 3959 as shown in the Black Swan. If that wasn't clear, for anybody who doesn't understand the implications, we only have one horizon, and the horizon in the globe model is physical and geometric. It's claimed to physically obscure things in the distance, and the geometry is how you calculate those drop values. Those hidden values utilize a tangent to a physical horizon known as Earth curve that's been debunked by the Black Swan. Hope that's clear. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
15-degree drift, Nathan. And you need R for that.
You need R for that.
You do need R for that. Radians is the value that they give you the spin. Well, you're going to need an R for that. Any evidence of the R value? Earth radius.
Black Swan.
Alberuni disproved it.
Alberuni.
Only in the math.
I say Alberuni.
That's a great example, Arwin, isn't it, of the bold claim that the horizon is, once again, a physical geometric leading edge that is obstructing things physically. That's the premise for Alberuni's calculation to up a mountain, see as far as he can to see the furthest bit of edge so he could make his calculations accurate, but all with the premise that that horizon is a physical leading edge. Black Swan.
Well,
That's right, and it didn't work out. He was only several degrees off, you know?
because he minimized the effects of refraction, right? By going on top of the mountain.
Did you want to add something, Lex?
That was to have the deep angle.
Hold on,
You
George.
needed a deep angle.
Just one sec, George.
Aronu Neville. Aaron Neville. Dankjewel.
The claim that he went up the mountain to minimize the effects of refraction is interesting because obviously when you go up higher,
Hello.
down to
Am I
the
live?
alleged leading edge, that would take you through multiple layers of different layers of atmosphere plane, wouldn't it? You would have that graduated atmosphere, which would increase refractive effects. So it's a strange claim to say I went higher to get less refraction when in doing so you're actually going to generate more because you're looking through different atmosphere planes.
Well, you can effectively see further, and that means because of the angle to it, but also means more air to look through. Exactly. And when we talk about refraction in Al-Biruni, there was no such thing as terrestrial refraction with an R value in it. He was there to supposedly establish the radius of Earth without a conception of terrestrial refraction. And he was off.
He's measuring the geometry, so regardless of what they say in terms of him accounting for refraction, well, he's measuring geometry. So what his measurement requires is that the horizon be that tangent point that's later used in the maths. So that's what he's measuring. There's no two ways about what he's doing. He's doing a dip angle measurement to the horizon. Because why? Well, that's where the edge of Earth curve will be. That's the leading edge.
Yeah, like Adam said, it's an interesting claim that they do that. I mean, they're clutching at straws. They can come up with anything. Their reasoning behind it is that you get the thickest layers at the bottom, yeah, and you're looking through what would be more atmospheric effects, like if you're looking above water or maybe some land that's giving off some heat. So if you rise up higher, you minimize the effects of refraction, which I don't agree with. Like
You don't have to,
Adam
'cause-
explained it.
Because they're
Makes-
they're detailing atmospheric effect. Oh, well, they'll need an R value for that, won't they?
Exactly.
So
They'll need,
whenever anybody
curved
starts
gases too.
detailing refraction, well, what kind of refraction? Does light refract? Yeah. What kind of refraction are we talking about when we detail it over the curved surface of an Earth that's spherical in your assumption? Oh, well, it would be atmospheric refraction, wouldn't it? You'll need an R for that.
Yeah, sphere-shaped air refraction. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'll assume air's sphere-shaped and has got these increasingly thick layers as you look over a curved surface. That means that you're looking through more of it as it goes further away and dips away from you. You've got more layers to look through. Therefore, you're going to have more atmospheric refraction because I've assumed atmosphere. I've assumed the air is sphere-shaped, and that's the cause of light bending at a rate roughly the same as the sphere itself, so you don't really notice. Oh, really? How are you going to get the geometry measurements then? Because that's got sod all to do with anything optical. It's everything to do with the geometry. And if you're measuring geometry, you better damn well be looking at it. Oh, you can't see it, so how are you going to measure it? You can't, is the answer. Al-Biruni didn't measure Earth curve as a physical geometric sphere edge to get dip angle measurement to derive a radius. That simply didn't happen. Because the horizon, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, we've only got one, and the horizon we see isn't Earth curve.
The radius line from the circle of equal altitude of a star that's 4,000 miles away destroys that anyway. Because the radius line is straight.
Yeah, it couldn't triangulate unless you had a flat plane beneath your feet, and you could draw out a circle with a straight line to the edge of it, all of which points in one direction. That we've got a flat plane, and we can triangulate with the stars, assuming that there's a straight line meeting that flat plane at 90 degrees in every single direction. Well, that being the case, there's no other way of measuring it, navigating it, unless it's flat. Now, for all of your apologetics in terms of inserting R values and showing how it could be done, isn't how it's done. That's the bottom line. Same with their build stuff. They're not building on curved surfaces.
And the sextant suggests that the sky is flat too, right?
It suggests it works in that manner further inference will not be tolerated. I'm afraid not.
Well, the zenith is the altitude, and that's always the 90, the plumb line. And it's got to meet something at the bottom to be called the perpendicular, and that's got to be a straight baseline of 0. And there's your right angle, and this is all within the language of celestial navigation. It's got to be perpendicular. The star's GP, what is that? That's not coming in from an angle. The GP of the star is when the altitude, it's at its zenith, the highest point in the sky. And straight down is located on the Earth. Straight down, that's a straight line. That's your 90. But you need something else for that 90, and you need that baseline. And that's why it's got a perpendicular relationship to it. And this is all language within all the sextant books and manuals and videos I watched and read, and it was like, wait a minute, you're saying you need a right angle, so that means the radius has got to be straight all the way to the navigator. So where's your curve? Well, there goes the curve, because you can't have an angle with a curved surface. Just takes a little bit of digging. Anti-flat earthers and ballers.
E. Samaholsky's in chat. He says 600 nautical miles are navigated flat. That might be the case, but in terms of the triangulation, Issa, it's far, far more.
That square miles or miles squared?
Ah, you beat me to it.
Don't start.
Can I share just for a second, Nathan? Just
You are.
Come back. Lovely. What I've got on screen is the derivation mass for Al-Biruni, which we've mentioned is crucial in terms of disproving the ball, or the theory of what he's doing, and highlighting that we're measuring to a physical location. What he does, I think we're all familiar with that. What's quite interesting is you see there, he's got the mountain M. And to know the height of that mountain is crucial. And he does some very, very clever mathematics, which I agree with, to get the height of the mountain. And that's up here. But what he does is he basically pulls a sextant out and takes different measurements from different distances, known distances, to do it. Now, this is his base. This is his basic calculation that he's going to work everything from. But if you can see, there seems to be a slight problem here, because the way he's worked it out is to assume that the way to calculate the height of the mountain is to work on a flat base and not a curved surface, which is what he's about to then go and measure. So all of the initial calculations to calculate the height of the mountain are based upon the presupposition that he's measuring across a flat plane.
Oh, I did not know that.
I just read it and figured it out now.
Oh, isn't that priceless? So when you're going to measure off your correctional values for doing dip correction, in actuality, it works the same way as his mathematics for calculating the height that he's going to start with. Oh, how joyous. So he even needs it to be flat. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. Watch B is not subject to any curvature, even though it's a distance from O. And the same with A.
So he's going to take a few known parameters, one of them being the flat plane that he's going to use. This is ace. Turn out the lights, the party's over. They say that all good things should end.
Look at the base here to calculate the height, and then look what he then puts it on. Huh. But his calculations come out here for a massive distance straight. So, yeah. Sorry, Uncle Bobby.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. The tangled web you weave. Yeah.
Nathan, to complement Adam's picture, go to the one I just posted.
In Master B?
Yes.
Okay, let's have a look.
Morning, guys.
Good morning, Chuck.
The cartoon one.
Hi, Chuck.
Yeah. So here's a vertical sextant reading offshore to, say, a lighthouse or a windmill, whatever. We'll call it a lighthouse. And you can see it's the same thing Adam is talking about. And there you got to have the circle of equal altitude as well, with the GP of the lighthouse coming out to where you are on that part of the circle and on the water. Get your compass bearing with the azimuth, 300 degrees. And again, as you can see on the right side, the picture, you need that baseline, just like Adam just showed, even if you go the other way.
Indeed.
That picture Tim says is demonstrating how he would have got the height. That's the top of the mountain there, and that's what he's doing. Then he's going to go to a much further distance and take another angle and do flat planar trig to determine the height.
Right, it's what we had to do at St. Bees Beach. It's just a simple triangulation measurement, but by the same token, you've got to have a flat plane to do it. You can't not do it without it. I think this is great. Why didn't we spot this before, Adam? Props.
I was literally just flicking, and it just popped up because you don't see that bit of maths, and I just saw that and thought, hello, that's not a ball he's starting on, is it? And then I've read the maths, and it is just trig, look. And then he goes.
Even to presuppose you're on a ball, you need to start with flat.
Yeah. Well, that's the point. He'd have to, like, even if he did this, once he'd then figured out the, if there was a curve, he'd then have to go back and amend all his first measurements that told him the height of the island, because A would be subject to a drop rate and B would be subject to a drop rate, wouldn't it? Because they're different distances. So there would be curvature playing out, which would pervert his measurements, which would mean his measurements were wrong, which would mean when he then applied those measurements to his geographic horizon, they'd be wrong anyway, because it would have been initially calculated on a flat plane, not on the ball that he's working off and having to compensate for. It's just bunker maths, isn't it?
Exactly. It changes the value of the bottom part of his triangle for the first height measurement. If he's assuming a chord, i.e. his bulge between him and then the lighthouse or the mountain in this instance that he's measuring, well, obviously you haven't got a straight path, you've got a curved path. That would increase that line, which completely throws all the measurements off. But the bottom line is, it's back to the triangulation in actuality. He isn't doing that, is he? He's actually doing it flat, right? He's not back engineering his presupposition that he's going forth to measure to derive R when he gets the height of the mountain. He's just doing it flat. It doesn't surprise me, though. Does it surprise you? Like when we found Andrew Thomas Young talking about refraction, and then he says, well, obviously we've got to do all this across a flat surface. The geometric considerations are on page 47. But for now, obviously, we just do it on a flat surface because that's how it actually works. And in this case, when you're measuring heights of stuff, you've got a straight line between you and the bottom of it. That's just how it works, and it works every time. But then, obviously, once we've got those data points, we can go forth and assume that we're measuring a surface that's curved. It's really easy. It's so stupid when you realise what you've been deceived with. All you can do is look back and laugh, right? But while I'm laughing my head off, this is severe pain to our opponents, isn't it? This is really cognitively difficult to process. I'm sure there's a lot of people watching right now who are fundamentalist religious zealots in favour of a ball belief that they've lost some time ago and are now fighting the anti-flat earth fight, that they're going to go through this and go, what do we do? Something needs to be done. Surely he did actually back engineer his height measurement with a curved surface in mind. No, he didn't. No, he just used what he had, and that was flat.
Hey, Nathan, I got some more pics in there in Master B. You can pour some salt on those wounds.
Okay, so I've got your first, again, cartoony triangulation of a lighthouse. Is that what you wanted?
Yeah, you see the guy with the sextant aiming at the lighthouse?
Yeah, got beardy guy.
Yeah, now go to the next one. You need that baseline, right?
Yeah.
You see the 90 degree there on the lighthouse?
Yeah.
That's the GP of the lighthouse, where it is over the Earth. It's the same thing for the stars. Go to the next one. your sailboat off the coast, lighthouse. Same thing. You need that 90, which is the GP of the lighthouse. And to create that baseline, to get the angle, you can't get an angle off a curved surface. And that's what a sextant is, angle measuring device. Next one, just another one. This one shows the 90 box. And then, of course, you got to make your dip correction for how high you are above the water to get an actual correct read.
Before we move on to the next one, see this little box here at the bottom of this lighthouse. What this box says is Earth is flat. That's what that box says. That little 90-degree angle, that little box that says this is at 90 degrees, this is a square. That says Earth's flat. That's what that symbol means.
That whole diagram's fantastic. It confirms exactly that mathematically, that the way you're working out is on a flat plane, and the only correction you've got to do to bring your triangle back, look, is that dip correction, which is, I think, inappropriately described as the dip correction. It's the height you are above the water, above the plane that you're taking all the measurements correction. Dip implies curvature to me, not what the actual correction is correcting for.
Not labelled as anything other than H on this diagram. So what Adam's now describing is this measurement. So if you're on a boat and you're, 100 foot above the water, probably wouldn't work in this scale. Let's make it a smaller boat. Let's say you're 20 foot above the water. Well, then when you're taking your measurement, the assumption that you've got a flat plane below you, in order for this to work, I might as well say it as it is, right? It must be a flat plane beneath you for this to work, as opposed to it's an assumption. It just has to be. Well, that doesn't change the fact that you're above that surface, that flat line that you must have for this to work. You're above it. So when you actually take your measurement to the baseline of this lighthouse, or the horizon if you're doing triangulation, then you've got to correct for the fact that you're now looking at a down angle across a flat surface. Likewise, if you're doing triangulation to measure a really long piece of wood, and you got up a ladder to do it, you'd have to correct that angle that you were then above that long piece of wood to bring it down to the level of the wood. Well, that's all it is. It's a height correction. Well, in sextant terminology, it's called a dip angle correction. Coincidentally, they've got a dip angle measurement for a physical horizon to give you radius. So the terms are the same. Now, what's being done is very different. In terms of the sextant, it's just minusing off your height to bring you down to the level of the flat plane that you must have to get this box at 90 degrees to the thing you're triangulating with, in this case, the light on the lighthouse.
Yeah, that's true. Go to the next one, and we can read something here.
Just before you flick on that, just to exemplify the point, we're talking about a straight baseline, and the dip correction there, we was talking, say, 10, 20 feet, Nathan gave an example of, and that's the correction it puts in to keep the maths correct to triangles. If, say, that distance was 10 miles from the boat to then the curvature correction you'd have to put in is something like 66 feet. So you can see the maths clearly describes to you that you are dealing with the height above the water. You are not compensating to correct your maths for a curvy surface. The correction is to bring it all exactly to a flat plane.
Correct, and further to that, it's a simple correction. You're just adjusting for the height above the water or ground that you're measuring over, right? Now, there's no not exponential, there's no squared function to apply based on distance to the measured item. No, just a correction for height. Very simple. Do you want to carry on with the next slide, 10th?
Yeah, as you can see here, he's got an image from the ocean view of some rock or island, and he has to bring the top of the rock to ocean level with the double reflected mirror of the sextant. Go to the right of that, you see another one with the writing underneath showing a boat from a rock with a lighthouse, and it explains it. The reflected image must be brought down to the horizon, not down to the land or base of the lighthouse. So you're not going to do the base of the lighthouse. the height of the light above sea level is given in the light list. So obviously, since you're near land, you refer to your chart books, and it tells you the height of the lighthouse, the height of the cliff, and you're using that for coastal navigation. But you still have to use that double image mirror, reflected image, and bring that down, just like you do the sun and do the rocking over the horizon in the ocean when there is no landmarks. And go to the last picture, and it shows it here quite well. So here we have a ship off the shore. He wants to know the distance, so he can refer to his charts. He sees a lighthouse that's also listed in the chart. He gets the dimensions of the lighthouse. He brings the top of the lighthouse down to the bottom at sea level. Okay, and there you get your 90. Triangulation. So do you ballers or anyone who say you don't need 90 to use the sextant, you just walked into the biggest mess you ever walked into.
Don't talk about that.
Don't mention the 90.
Shh.
Good stuff.
What's the number after 89?
90.
Oh, shh.
You guys are real smug.
What's under my bed?
Let's move on. Let's move on. Still haven't, a couple of days we haven't made our way through housekeeping all the way. So, any scientific evidence of gravity?
No.
Don't mention 90.
We've passed that. Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
It's more than likely you're going to need R for that, so no.
More than likely, but until we actually get a viable hypothesis in the first place, we can't really accuse them of needing R for it.
More housekeeping questions. Don't mention.
Can we stop with the whispering?
Hold on. I popped on to Jim Panda's last night, like real quick, like 30 seconds quick, and they're still talking about traveling high enough to see the horizon curve. So I'm telling you, they just make believe the black swan don't exist. Out of sight, out of mind, you know?
Well, have they figured out how high you have to go yet? Because they're still working on that, as far as I know. Every time you ask one of them, how do you have to go to see the curvature? It's always like, it's always one of those signal, and I got dinner on the stove, and
Yeah, but the funny thing was, you followed it up with just one of the many, many sphere Earth proofs that we've been pounding the flat Earthers with. I just had to laugh.
Doesn't Neil deGrasse say that stuff's flat? You can't get high enough. Don't listen to the right proofs.
Yeah, but he's trying to get you to fall into the same trap, which is to say that the reification of the horizon into a physical geometric sphere edge known as Earth curve, that's the magic trick. And I'll say it again, it's the third time in this show. We only have one horizon. And the horizon in the Begging the Question Proof of Nothing Perspective Hijacking Earth Curve Calculator, aka the Earth Curve Model, is physical and geometric. It is required of it that it blocks things into the distance and has a drop value beyond it. That requires it to be a tangent point. That is the geometry of Earth Curve, and we have debunked the horizon as Earth Curve. The horizon is not Earth Curve. Now, this is only just, I think it was Righteous Force who said, oh yeah. So when they say it should be bending at high altitude, that's the same exact horizon that you've debunked with the Black Swan then? Yes, it is. Going up high and suddenly talking about whether or not you can see curvature is the reification of the horizon into Earth curvature. I'll say it once more. The horizon is not Earth curvature. Any evidence you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon?
You're gonna need 3 containers for that.
Yeah. Any evidence you can have gas pressure without a container?
No. Necessary antecedent.
That sounds like a loaded question.
Well, they claim that gravity has the ability to hold the gases on.
What's that?
Gravity?
What's gravity?
Exactly.
Oh, we just covered this. Right, let's go back a couple of steps. Any scientific evidence of gravity?
No.
Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
You're gonna need that for that.
You would need the spherical Earth for there to be a core in the center of a spherical Earth.
You know, nobody's going to talk about this or try to refute it or anything. Like, you know, day in, day out, the question gets asked. Nobody really pipes up for it. Can you explain to us why it's self-perpetuating? Or, okay, can you explain why you're wording it as self-perpetuating?
Sure, because it's beyond the Curie point, and therefore it shouldn't be generating anything unless it's got some sort of dynamatic effect, i.e. it's self-creating this dynamatic, I think is the right word. So self-perpetuating its own magnetic field beyond its Curie point where it shouldn't be doing that.
Point being, they've possibly shown it to be done. I think with lithium, you can do it, but I think fundamentally with regards to their claim that this core, this presupposed core is molten iron now, with Nathan said that once it goes past the Curie point, that is the bit that contradicts known knowledge, that you lose all magnetism past that point, hence why it will then need to have some mechanism that's generating it, because from known knowledge, their claim contradicts itself. You can't have iron at that temperature and it have a magnetic effect.
There's no other way they can explain the magnetic field, is there? In their model.
The point, mate. The magnetic field that we know is there, that we can all see with our computers, that's what they attribute it to, don't they? That's their just so story. At the center of their presupposed ball is this thing that's given this thing that we know exists, but that's their just so story for why.
All right, we might have a new guy that might want to add something.
Oh yeah.
Here we go. Should we take him off mute? He's the one that disrupted
shit.
before. He wasn't sure he was hot micing, so you want to give him a chance, Nathan?
Oh sure. Legs. Is that right?
Yes. Okay, you're
Go
off
ahead,
mute, new
Legs.
guy. Hey, Lega. Right. Well, I tried.
well done for trying. Well, that concludes the housekeeping anyway, so at least we got all the way through it today. Been a while. Well, you trying to get that guy on has really killed the mood. Thanks for that, Righteous.
Apologies.
Could have told you that.
I'll interject with after your conversation the other day with my coworker, that I don't know. It's like there's this block with some people that like, it's like you tell them something and they just aren't willing to accept it, even though what you're talking about isn't subjective. You're not talking about feelings and emotions and what your idea of something is. You're talking about what is and what isn't. And then with science, you talk about cause and effect, and it's like they don't want to understand it. It's like, you know, it's weird. Like I'm still having the same argument with her. It's crazy.
There was a point, I think, when Nathan clarified. I'm not interested in what you think it is. I'm not here to argue with you. And that seems to be quite a normie's response. I think intuitively they know it's not right. So they fill in some gaps themselves and give them their own version. And that was what that lady was trying to say. Yeah, I know that it's probably not right, but I think of it like this, which validates it for me.
Yes, and that's half our argument all the time is I think of it like this, and I think my idea of it is this. And it's like, okay, I understand that that's your idea, but we're not talking about your idea of what it is. We're talking about what it is, objectively. And it's like, I don't know. It's weird. It's this thing they do. And then I got, like, after going through the whole thing with between theory and scientific theory, and then it's like, she turned it around. It was just like, see, but what you don't understand about a scientific theory. And I was like, what are you talking about? I just told you what it is. How are you going to tell me I don't understand? I was like, wow, that you don't understand thing is a real phenomenon, man. I gotta say, people really go to that when they have nothing left to turn to. It's crazy.
The difference you're highlighting is objective and subjective. They don't like objective. They don't want truth. They don't want truth to be truth and everything else compared to it be a lie. They don't ever want that kind of world. They want, well, I look at it this way. Yeah, but that's not what it is. Yeah, but still, I want to look at it that way.
But why is it you don't like objective only when the thing that you thought was objective no longer is? Now, all of a sudden, objective could be shaky. What?
Because they can't handle flat. That's it. They cannot handle it being flat.
Yeah.
No, it's like we've been given this.
Funny line.
Go ahead, Adam.
Just to quote, it was us three when we was watching that Neil deGrasse Tyson. Doesn't he have a quote for that chocolate in terms of I'm not prepared to debate with people objective truths, and yeah, I think he kind of highlights that's the war you're up against. It's an objective truth to them, even though they can't validate why.
But see that statement right there, especially from him, right? It's so chicken shit, right? Because he fixed it up before, he prefaced it with, oh, well, somebody could have it, come on and debate and be full of character and charisma and personality, right? And then juxtaposed it with him having objective truth, and then he might actually lose a debate to somebody because that somebody might have more character or personality than he does, even though his objective truth should stand because, according to him, it's objective truth. No, but he's saying that his objective truth might lose to somebody with personality. That's the weakest position I've ever heard in somebody who declares they are a priest of science. This is ridiculous. And these are what you guys got.
Yeah, but he basically said he's not going to debate anybody outside of the heliocentric debate. He's only going to debate in the heliocentric model.
Oh, in Narnia, yeah.
So to put that to the test, chocolate, we have a car that's painted blue, and I come and I say to him, hey, I want to debate you on the color of this car. He says, no, because, and how would he do it? How would he finish that off? Because everyone knows the color. Everyone knows the color blue, right? That's the objective color of blue.
Yeah, if you're like, you're going to be saying, nah, it's red. And he's like, objectively, I know it's blue, but I'm I'm not prepared to debate you because, you know, you might have a bit of bants, sway the crowd.
Yes.
Even though it's objectively true, you'll convince them it's red.
Yeah, your personality will overwhelm my objective truth.
Yeah,
I think
that's a good point.
Well, I see it as projection. That's precisely what he does.
Actually, exactly what it is. It's projection because he's the guy with the personality and the cool sunrise ties and all that shit, telling witty jokes, dropping mics, right? He's the guy with all the character and personalities. I mean, if you like that type of shit, I think he's a cornball personally, but people like that, right? About him, that's why he's always talking in front of audiences and he does, you know, all that shit, right? But he's the one without the objective truth, so he has to portray it like he's got it, and the other side is the one that's going to come all witty. Ridiculous. So
he's a priest. What he says is unquestionable, and he's making that out overtly clear.
So the way I see it is like, well, okay. I'm not even going to preface it. What your friend accepted was a grand delusion. Obviously, this is like so far from like this heliocentric model. Everything that we witness, everything that we experience is like exactly the opposite of what these people claim, and then they have justifications for why that is. That's a grand delusion that she's accepted, and I don't know many texts that speak to people who accept grand delusion, other than, you know, one.
The whole world?
Well, can I just give Chocolate my interpretation of his co-worker, which is to say that I don't see her as fighting in the same way we normally typically see here, because she hasn't fallen down the hill yet, right? She's still on that hill, unlike most of the people who come here. So she's scrambling to not fall down the hill. That's very different to having already seen what you've seen here and having to deny. I mean, she started to go through the motions, but I've almost felt quite cruel. It's like, do you want to rob somebody of their blissful ignorance of this subject? Because in many ways, the people who don't know about it, it doesn't necessarily affect them in a negative way, in a perceivable surface level negative way. I don't want to get into the deeper implications of having a sphere Earth belief and the... I just don't want to get into that. I'm just saying that you shatter that person's illusions. You're basically forcing them down that metaphorical hill we talk about when we say you get to the bottom and you can either fork off to the left and anti-flat Earth, and that means you've got to try and, you know, convince yourself that you're still at the top of that hill when you've fallen down it. Well, for her, she hasn't. And, I don't know, that's a very different way of trying to fight a cognitive bias to keep it in place rather than have it shattered and try and put it back together again.
yeah, I agree, and she's the same one that told me, you know, I even though some of what you say makes sense, a lot of it I can't accept it fully, and I don't think I ever could, because if what you're saying is true, then I don't know what else could be a lie. Everything else could be a lie.
Oh dear. Oh, well,
Yes,
then that changes
she's
things
gone
very
that
much.
route.
Then that changes things. That statement means she's an anti-flat earther then.
Yeah.
She's already contemplated it. She can't have made that statement unless she's contemplated it. That contemplation means she's fell down the hill.
Say that again.
Yeah.
Say it again. What do you...
That she's told me that what a lot of what we've discussed does make sense to her, but she cannot accept it, because if she does, then she has to accept that her whole life is a lie, and she doesn't know what else could be a lie, could not be, and it would just completely destroy her.
She's been watching Conspiracy Cats.
I was going to say he said almost the same thing, but she's already describing having done that cognitively. So what she's described is the antithesis of what she's described here live. So she's describing the other half of cognitive dissonance. To be able to make that statement, she has contemplated it, but it stands in direct contrast and opposition to what she must hold true. Right? Well, that's pain.
Yeah.
That's why she said what she said, which is what I picked up on. Yeah, in terms of but I don't view it like that. So she recognizes the contradictions, the failures in the heliocentric model. She can see the obvious truth out there, and yet she's keeping the ball with her own special theories and methodologies now.
Exactly. I'll give you an example. A widespread, more common example would be Earth is claimed to turn underneath stuff at 15 degrees an hour, and from the ground as we turn beneath it, we will observe it seem to drift. That's called Coriolis effect. That is the claim the globe makes. Now, when we as flat earthers point out to said globe believer at the top of that hill, high and mighty, telling us how we've got Coriolis deflection, and things drift away at 15 degrees an hour, obviously, because that's what the globe says, and we say, well, then Earth would be turning underneath your drone. And it's not. Earth would be turning underneath an aeroplane, and that would shorten flight times when travelling west, and they don't have flights shortened when travelling west. Earth's not turning beneath anything. And then that same person who's formerly at the top of the hill, high and mighty because he knows things drift, because that's what the globe claims they do, and you're pointing out that they don't, they say, we shouldn't see drift because there's only one reference frame. Earth isn't turning underneath anything. And you go, that's actually kind of like my argument, but just with you retaining the idea that we spin at the same time, in contradiction of the actual claim that we'll see an effect when that happens. That would be drift. That you're telling me we won't see anymore? That's two positions being held in cognitive dissonance.
And when I first started hearing that, I thought that might just be like a one-off, right? When these globe idiots started showing up here, and we would go through that, and I would hear them make that switch. And I'm like, nah, I can't. Okay, maybe this is just this one guy. And then another guy would come in with the same crap. And then, years later, now we're still being told the same shit. Now they're both saying it on the same side, both saying the same shit. It's insane. And I thought, wow, this is really it's almost like an epidemic.
Well, it was certainly a pattern, and it was a pattern that I didn't know how to overcome in terms of argument. And I also gave credit where it wasn't due to the people doing it. Because I thought, how is this person mentally capable of doing these acrobatics on the fly and still sounding like they believe what they're saying, even though they're in contradiction to the thing they said 25 seconds ago? How are they doing that mentally? And I thought, wow, they must just be really sharp. Later did I realise how wrong I was. No, actually in cognitive pain. Actually, those acrobatics are painful to perform on the fly, and having to be done in real time isn't something that you would wish on your worst enemy.
So back to our favorite movie. Why does everyone act like, is his name Cypher versus just being Neo?
You're really muffled, Eli.
Why do, Mike check?
Yeah, you're just really muffled. I don't know if sounds like you got a blanket over you or something. Is that just me?
No, he's muffled.
I heard favourite movie, so I'm assuming he's going to make a Matrix example.
Yeah, can someone finish it for me? Neo versus the guy that wants the steak.
Can't hear him.
He's talking about Cypher taking the deal for the steak. Can someone finish that for him? He's asking.
I don't know what point he wants to make, though, do I? So how can I make it for him?
You don't have to T-bone the question right away, Nathan.
Oh, okay. Cypher gets a juicy steak because he's promised that he can get reinserted into the Matrix. Metaphorically, I would draw a parallel between him wanting to go back into the Matrix and somebody who's already in the cognitive dissonance, contemplating the lies that must be part of their world if they realise that the thing that you've just explained that cannot not be true is true. At that point, that Cypher sat with a steak being offered to go back into the Matrix. The problem is, metaphorically speaking, you can't plug back into the globe model. It is impossible. Once you've contemplated it, like this person we're discussing, you can't undo or unsee or unhear what you have heard.
Yeah, perfect.
If you want to enjoy the finer things in life, then you will get the, you know what.
But the bottom line is that it's crazy how many ciphers there are out there. Because I've wondered initially, wow, how does this person know how to argue like, one of the people that we've spoken to here? And it's because they realize that what you're telling them is true, and they are deliberately trying to maneuver around it because they see what you see.
Yeah, and they'd have to accept it.
Deliberately trying to maneuver.
Yeah, so if they've heard a previous person argue that you can have no drift and explain why there's no drift, when a flat earther points out there's no drift, explain why there's no drift. Don't apologise for the fact that you're supposed to have it. Don't contemplate that the globe claims you will have it. Just explain why we haven't. And that's what they'll do. They'll go through the motions of doing what they've seen someone else do, because that's the reasonable response to give when your claim doesn't pad out. Supposed to have drift and you don't. What's your answer? Here's why we don't. Well, you're supposed to have it though, but here's why we don't. And so you go round and round in circles with somebody who's explaining to you why you don't see drift when the claim is that you do. Now, that person who's explaining that projects all of their cognitive dissonance straight onto their opponent. And back in the day, it was very frustrating. Now you know, no, that's just a person in cognitive dissonance. You've shown them that their claim doesn't pad out. If we had drift, we'd see drift. It's very simple. If Earth was spinning and we had Coriolis effect, we'd observe it. And we don't. So once you've explained that to them, if the person contemplates it and says, yeah, but if I accept that, that means that they've lied to me about there being spin. Or they can say, no, we wouldn't expect to see drift underneath. And then they have a little malfunction and a little short circuit.
Nathan, Eli.
After a while.
Mute up, Eli.
Yeah, Eli making a lot of noise.
Just on that point, right, it's the morosophy of why the Earth shouldn't exhibit any, why we shouldn't feel any effects of the spin, even though it's spinning. And it's that knowledge, that foolish knowledge of why we shouldn't experience it, even though we are doing, that reinforces the cognitive dissonance for them. Yeah? So it empowers the cog dis. I know all about why we shouldn't feel it spinning, even though it's spinning. Therefore, it proves that it's spinning.
Yeah, but it's worse because they're saying, I know how I can explain why we don't see drift. Now, as a flat earther, my reply now is what the drift the globe claims we should see. Now, formerly, you might have seen the Kosho versus Blue Marble, or Kosho versus Blue Marble and Simon Dan, who both forward positions of no drift. We wouldn't expect to see Earth turning under a hot air balloon. Here's an example of a man not drifting from his trampoline. So here's our explanation for no drift from anti-flat earthers who think they're globe believers. Like, no, cognitive pain. Go ahead.
No, but that's the point. It's that morosophicness of the why you're not experiencing drift, even though it's drifting in their mind. That's that understanding of that bullshit knowledge, that foolish knowledge, yeah, that they say because we've got lockstep, different, and et cetera, yeah. It's that bit of knowledge that empowers the cognitive dissonance because they know that foolish knowledge. It supports the cognitive dissonance side, which is it puts it in the plus column. No, I'm right to keep thinking this way because I've got this bullshit knowledge about why something that definitely happens isn't happening.
Right, and that is what our opponents specialise in. So their job, this would be Craig and Dan and Katz and Dave and all of these cartoon characters. Their sole purpose is to feed the cognitive dissonance of ex-globe believers who would prefer to retain normality, because their normality isn't real anymore and they need an excuse for it to be real. So that's a market that needs filling.
Then if you push them long enough, you can actually get them get them to admit that planes must fly backwards.
Yeah, you can get them to admit all sorts of crazy, contradictory nonsense because they're fighting for a rebuttal against their original claim in the case of drift. We're supposed to see things drift. It's Coriolis effect. Everyone's heard of Coriolis effect. We're supposed to see the effect. Now, we, as flat earthers, say we don't see that effect. It doesn't happen. And they go, we don't see that effect happen because, as opposed to, yeah, we do, like the globe says we do. But they can't because it doesn't. So what they're going to do?
What they do
I
is
was
they
just gonna say that this is what they have to do. Like, I mean, Kosho's the same guy who said the geometric horizon is the horizon you wouldn't expect to see. Right? So when they know you don't see anything that's claimed to be seen by their model, they say, well, we don't expect to see it. And then they'll ask you for a citation, show me where it says I'm supposed to see it. And then when you show it to them, it's like, well, just because you don't understand that. It's like, what?
Well, how'd you measure it if you haven't seen it?
Well, that's Earth curve we're talking about now. So we're talking about the claim that you can see a physical geometric sphere edge obstruction, and based on there being a physical geometric sphere edge obstruction at their horizon, which they formerly called Earth curve before we debunked it with the black swan, would have a value for drop and hidden. Now those values would be ascribed to how much the physicality has blocked what's behind it. Well, when you point out that it's beyond the physical geometric limitations of a sphere Earth, and that the horizon is not Earth curve blocking your view, they say, we wouldn't expect to see Earth curve. In other words, explain why we're not seeing the very thing they claim to prove we're on a sphere. Or, with spin, the thing that we're supposed to observe to prove we're spinning, we're not seeing it. And in the case of the image on screen, the black swan, we're not seeing an Earth curve horizon. That isn't what's on this image. So the horizon's not Earth curve. Enter the anti-flat Earth apologist to tell us why we don't see Earth curve and how we wouldn't expect to see Earth curve.
And allowing his
And then they break
philosophic
down and
knowledge
say that
of
you
it.
can't leave any reference frame, or that you're in all reference frames all at once.
That's another one. That's another one that it's all doing the same thing, isn't it? Like we're highlighting it. They're taking the accepted contradiction and then validating it with morosophic knowledge. Well, of course we wouldn't expect to see that physical thing because of blah 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 blah. Yeah, or of course we wouldn't expect to see a second reference because of blah blah blah. Nonsense, morosophic stuff that then underpins their cognitive dissonance and allows them, Nathan, to rattle it off like that. Yeah, because that's how the cogdis works. It has to be reified that you go from A to B with that bit of nonsense because that's how you respond to it. But it underpins their cogdis, and each time, all those situations, you're highlighting they're doing the same thing. We accept contradiction, but we then give a load of waffle that allows us to stay in the paradigm. And waffle is morosophic in its nature.
And on that morosophic note, I'm going to say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, smashed the PayPal link, and all that good stuff. Also, below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. I've been Nathan Oakley. Stay tuned if you're watching on a premiering stream, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!